Most of the conversation I hear about technology right now circle around the same kind of question. How do I escape this? People fantasize about digital detoxes and moving off the grid and throwing their phone in a lake or deleting every app and disappearing. And I understand that impulse. But deep down, I think we both know that this is not the real path forward. We're not going back to a pre-digital world. AI is not a phase. This is the infrastructure of our lifetime. So the real question is not, how do I get away from technology? It's, how do I design a human life in the middle of it? A life that feels spacious and meaningful and embodied and relational. A life that uses AI for efficiency and insight so that you have more time for what actually makes life worth living. That is both our greatest opportunity and our most challenging calling for the foreseeable future. There was a very specific moment when this all crystallized for me. I was looking at what AI tools could already do, like they can summarize information, draft emails, build frameworks, organize tasks, even analyze patterns in my thinking, right? At first, I felt what many people feel. I felt threatened. I felt unsettled. I felt a bit obsolete. But then something in me shifted. I realized that if I stopped seeing AI as a competitor and started seeing it as a force multiplier, something entirely different becomes possible. Instead of asking, how is this going to replace me? I started asking, what happens if I let this handle the repetitive mechanical parts of my life so that I can spend my time on the things only a human can do? Things like conversations with my family, dinners with friends, time in nature, deep creative work, embodiment, sex, silence, travel, play, authentic human experiences. And it hit me very clearly. The real promise of AI is not more productivity for its own sake. It's space. Space in which to live a life that it's actually yours. And that's the most radical, difficult, and important design challenge in front of us. To consciously architect a human life in a world that will happily automate it for us if we don't. So to design that life, we have to understand what the digital world is doing to our brains and bodies right now. The brain is a predictive processing machine. It constantly builds models of reality, updates them, and uses them to anticipate what will happen next. It's a survival mechanism. Technology feeds that system at high speed. Your social feeds, notifications, emails, messages, recommendation engines, they constantly stimulate the brain's dopamine system, particularly the circuits that respond to novelty and reward. Each ping that you get on your phone says something might be important, so pay attention. Over time, three things happen. One, your attention networks become fragmented. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that enables focus and planning and self-control, gets pulled into dozens of microtasks per hour. And you start to feel scattered, not because you lack discipline, but because your brain is literally being trained to switch constantly. Your stress system normalizes high activation, and the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis keeps dripping cortisol. Neuroscientists call the cumulative effect of allostatic load. And that's to wear and the wear and tear of chronic microstress. You feel anxious even when nothing obvious is wrong, and your default mode network gets crowded. The DMN is the set of brain regions active when you are introspecting, daydreaming, and reflecting. It's crucial for self-awareness and meaning-making. But when your downtime is filled with scrolling, the DMN is constantly filled with other people's stories instead of your own. You lose contact with your inner narrative. This is why so many people feel empty and restless and overwhelmed in an AI-rich, always-on world. It's not a character flaw. It's neuroplasticity doing its job in an environment that was never designed for nervous system health. The good news is that neuroplasticity works both ways. If the digital world can train us into fragmentation, we can train ourselves back into coherence and purpose and presence. But that requires intentional design. Most people live a default digital life. They use the tools their peers use. They accept the notifications that come by default. They check what everyone else checks. They fill quiet moments with whatever the algorithm offers. Without realizing it, they have outsourced their days to systems that were never built with their humanity in mind. Designing a human life in a digital world means flipping that dynamic. It means you decide what your nervous system is exposed to. You decide what your time is for. You decide when AI enters your day and when it does not. You decide what balance and purpose look like for you. Technology becomes a servant in a life defined by human values, not a subtle master that defines your attention and emotions. And this isn't an abstract ideal. This is just a practical, designable reality. Before you can design around technology, you have to define what you're designing for. So what does human mean to you in this season of your life? For some, it's time in nature. For others, it's long dinners and shared rituals, intimacy, community, artistry, spiritual practice. At a deeper level, most people point to the same things: feeling present in their body, feeling connected to people that they care about, feeling engaged in a meaningful work or expression, maybe feeling a sense of inner quiet and orientation. These are the raw materials of a human life. Technology can support these or erode them. If you did not define them explicitly, your life will default to the values embedded in your tools: speed, volume, novelty, and output. So the first step is vision. What does a fully human day look like for you in an AI-driven world? When do you feel most yourself? What are you doing? Who are you with? What is absent? That vision becomes your North Star. Once you know what you're designing for, you can decide where AI belongs in that life. From a systems perspective, AI is extraordinary at things like pattern recognition, summarization, drafting and structuring information, repetitive problem solving, administrative workflows. But it's terrible at things like embodied presence, moral judgment, relational nuance, felt meaning, spiritual insights, or genuine creativity grounded in direct lived experience. Designing a human life means placing AI in the parts of your day where your humanity is least required, so you can free your time and energy for the parts where your humanity is most required. Deep science supports this. When you offload repetitive cognitive tasks, you reduce decision fatigue, lower cognitive load, and free up prefrontal capacity for higher order thinking, for things like empathy and creative problem solving. In other words, when you let AI handle the boring parts, your brain becomes more available for the beautiful parts. But that does not happen by accident. It happens when you consciously decide. These are the zones where I bring my full human presence. These are the zones I am willing to automate. You cannot design a human life without attending to the nervous system. If your biology is constantly in fight or flight, no amount of vision will feel stable. Deep research points to a few key levers. Things like bounded input windows. Checking messages, news, and feeds in predefined windows instead of continuous exposure allows your nervous system return to the baseline between bouts of stimulation. Or things like tech-free anchor moments. Walking, meal times, movement, and bedtime. These are powerful anchor moments where the brain encodes safety and meaning. Keeping these analog only protects your sense of self and connection. Cyclical work rhythms. Aligning deep work with your personal ultradian rhythms, like 90 to 120 minute natural focus cycles, and then stepping away from screens. This helps the brain consolidate information and reduces allostatic load. Somatic counter practices, things like breath work, walking, stretching, touch, and stillness. These all send signals through the vagus nerve that say, we're safe, and you can downshift. This restores access to intuition and perspective. From a design standpoint, these are not self-care extras. They are structural components of a human life. This is where the impossible prompt is not just a concept, but a very practical system. Most people try to redesign their life at the level of willpower. They say things like, I'll use my phone less, or I'll meditate more, or I'll be more intentional. But intentions evaporate under stress. What you need is a personalized operating system that understands your patterns and helps you to rewrite them. Inside the impossible prompt, we use AI as a mirror and a guide, not a master. So during the calibration phase, the system listens to how you describe your days, your stress, your time use, and your desires. It detects where your nervous system is overextended, where your values and your calendar do not match, and where technology is quietly stealing hours and energy. Then, based on that, it helps you design things like a day that reflects your actual priorities, boundaries around tech that protect your nervous system, spaces for authentic human experience, strategic zones where AI does the heavy lifting. It's not about adding more rules. It's about building a life where your biology and your values and your tools are aligned. You end up with what we might call a human-centered AI environment. AI does what it does best. and you do only what you can do. The most important thing in this talk I want you to hear is this. You are not powerless in the face of technology. You are not at the mercy of algorithms, and you're not doomed to endless distraction. You're not required to live a life you did not consciously choose. You can design your relationship with the digital world just as intentionally as you can design a home or a garden or a business. You can decide what you will give your attention to, when you will invite AI in, when you will keep it out, what experience you want more of, and what you are no longer willing to sacrifice. But let's be honest, the challenge is real. The forces pulling your attention away from yourself are powerful, multi-billion dollar, sometimes multi-trillion dollar systems. But your awareness is more powerful than that. The future belongs to the people who can learn to live fully human in the middle of machines that never sleep. Those who understand that the efficiencies of AI are not an invitation to cram more into every day, but an invitation to create more space for what makes us feel alive. That is the real frontier, people. If this resonates with you and you feel that truth in your body, if you know you cannot escape technology, but you refuse to let it steal your life, then this is your next step. This is your call. Do me a favor and request your private invitation to the Impossible Prompt. Together, we will design your personal blueprint for a human life in a digital world, a life where AI is used as a tool and not as a tyrant, a life with balance and purpose and space for authentic human experience. Because the goal is not to beat the machines. The goal is to remember what they can never be, which is alive and present and connected and impossibly human.